Hi, everybody. I hope you're all good and in high spirits. I have two cautionary tales today. One is a relative who worked really, really hard his whole life to get ahead. In fact, someone would say he was driven by that solely. And because he was intelligent, he accomplished it. He had ranches, thousands of cattle, thousands. People in the house living there paid to see him, overwatch him, make sure no one stole him. He had another Granja Santa Maria, that was a pig farm. Lots and lots of pigs, acres and acres in the back, all the way to the river. Cerros around there, little mud adobe villages with corrugulated aluminum roofs. Those were the workers at the farms. Big, beautiful house, 6 rooms, a lot of marble and porcelain in the city center. All the farms, like I said, they had houses on them. A lot of stock in veterinary pharmaceuticals because this was an agricultural region. Other farms and fields that just grew crops. And he passed away, and he left the money to his heirs. His heirs were not the businessman he was. His heirs were not the drug-free, alcohol-free. They were drug-free, but they were not the alcohol-free person he was. He didn't have vices. They did, all of them, pretty much. One, despite all that wealth, came to the United States, raised his family in the projects, on welfare, on AFDC. You know, sometimes the poorest ones in the projects because he would blow the AFDC on alcohol, trade the food stamps for alcohol. And then the builder of all that wealth passed away, passed on some generational wealth. I talk about that a lot. And now the cemetery is calling, saying they're going to dig him up and send him to a pauper's grave unless the municipal fees are paid. That might fall on someone who never claimed any of the inheritance because it's gone. Because those kids he had were not prepared, as the Bible says you should be, to grow an inheritance. In a way, almost all that he did was for naught. Because within one generation of him passing away, it was gone. Some got swindled by cousins who are probably putting it to better use than the people who lost it would have. I know one was just buying fancy things, wrecking them, drunk, and died a very, very sad, lonely death. It makes me sad that that's how it ended. You know, this is my family. The other example is if you've seen a gang picture in your life, you've seen this one more than likely. It's the most iconic gang picture I could think of. It's in black and white. And I'm friends with the family of someone in it. This family also had immense wealth. And the kids, the grandkids, lacked for nothing. Finest cars, vehicles, electronics, you know, neighborhood they lived in, everything. And again, almost within one generation, of the patriarch and matriarch passing, everything was gone. It wasn't built up. All that got, a lot of was just lost now. All that hard work didn't result in a generational wealth that can be grown, because the people receiving these inheritances, and it's not necessarily in the legal sense, just things are being passed down, aren't taught the same values that the people who built it up have. And I hear people a lot of times talk about values. We don't got the same values today that they had in the 90s. And it's usually in terms of like street culture. And I'll say this, I'm going to digress here for a second. I've yet to see one person from the 90s who trashes today's generation on how they dress actually be creased up. I've not seen it. Never planchados. I don't see baby cuffs. I don't see shoes that are shined. I don't see shirts with creases down the sides and the front and the back. That was a pride in your appearance, because you didn't have a lot of money to buy name brand stuff that didn't need to be ironed. So there's a little bit of hypocrisy there, but I digressed. The point of this story is, if you're pursuing money, you want to be rich. That's what drives you. Keep in mind that one day you will pass away, and hopefully the people you leave that money to can grow it and make it better, so that you have some kind of legacy. But if you're pursuing that money without balance to family and values, not street values, I'm talking about values of society, of regular folks, not warped values, but actual societal values that everyone across every culture can agree on, you run the risk of being dug up from the cemetery and sent to a pauper's grave, because the people that came after you weren't capable of managing what you had built. Those are your kids. I struggle with my kids. My kids think them motherfuckers don't got to do nothing. Well, you already said we got this house. Well, you know what? I shouldn't have did that. Now I'm telling you, I'm going to spend everything I fucking worked for. You guys can start on your own. I mean, I'll that's obviously not the case, but the point is, they don't need to think like that. They need to think like, okay, we don't got to bust our butts to work our way through school, and maybe suffer in our grades, be less competitive against other kids for these high-paying white-collar jobs. My dad worked hard so that I can go volunteer at these companies. I can do internships while I go to school, so I can focus solely on my grades, solely on my studies, so that I can excel there, and it'll pay off in the long run. That's what I'm instilling in them, trying to. And I don't know if I said it yet, but John Adams said, I study politics and war so that my kids could study geometry, arithmetic, law, science, technical stuff. And they should take advantage of that, so that their kids can study poetry, music, art. See, people evolve as they're allowed to focus less on just surviving. I've heard people say, nah, man, there ain't no racism. Anyone can pick themselves up by their bootstraps. Look at me. But the truth is, you have to you still don't have the luxury of saying, I just want to do this with my life and try to be that. Because, like me, you have to go to work. We didn't start out with those advantages. We're trying to build them and pass them along. A lot of us didn't think, no one ever once told me I was going to college. And I when I went, I thought it was easier than I imagined it would be, and I liked it. But my whole life, I always thought that was for those other people. And once in my early 20s, this nonprofit placed me in Caltrans. It was at $4.25 an hour. That was the minimum wage. It was through a federal block grant. And I did the term that the block grant paid for, and when I was done, I got this letter of commendation from the director, bunch of letters of recommendation, and I was like creased up, wearing Ben Davis's and all that, in the office like that. I was, that's how I dressed there, and they told me, you know what, go take 6 college classes, even if they're just PE, so we can hire you as a student assistant until we figure out how to get you on permanent. And I didn't think college was for me, so I didn't. Not even a PE class. I didn't know where to start. And I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together for the next 8 years, 10 years. And then when I had a baby, I thought, okay, you got to do something. So I took this test to get a job, and I got it and worked my way up. But I could have had 10 years already if I would have just listened to them, because I thought college was for people like me as well. So as I try to accumulate something to leave my kids, I let them know this is an option. It's not your only option, but I do explain, look, if you do this, you can be here. Like I've said, my colleagues at work, they have one walking 600 miles from France to Spain to a cathedral. I've had other friends and coworkers walk from Canada to Mexico along the mountain ranges. Others, in a high-powered fancy sailboat, but they'll sail across the whole Pacific. Others have gone to the Andes, and they have these wings that they jump from mountain to mountain. And they share the stories with us. They share the pictures, and we have a meeting, and we see what they did. And, others, they go to Galapagos Islands for a month. And these are things that no one that I know did. No one I know did those things. And I want my kids to be able to do those things. And if they just spend the money you leave them, they might do them here and there, but then it's a wrap. You got to teach them how to grow an inheritance. And that's part of making money. Have a good one. Much love to all of you. This took me like 5 tries because I would rant about other stuff, but I'm glad I kind of kept it on topic. Much love.